You know how we sometimes say that anime usually has another motive for existing other than just being a good piece of entertainment in and of itself? Like how many anime are just very large advertisements for the manga upon which they are based. Because of this mentality, when an ending of a manga comes and goes, I generally realize that we're probably never going to get either a first adaptation, if a show never got one, or another adaptation of that work, because there's nothing left to advertise. And it's a depressing feeling because, as I have stated many times before, I love anime. Anime is my preferred medium. Not that there's anything necessarily wrong with manga, but I just prefer seeing my pictures move and also have music to it and voice acting and all the wonderful things that anime has that manga doesn't. So it does get very depressing when a manga ends and we see nothing because there's nothing left to advertise. And what reason would a production company have to come together and actually make a new anime for a manga series that has ended a long time ago? I don't know, but 13 years after the original manga ended, a production committee starts up with the goal of readapting Fruits Basket from beginning to end. I don't know why they decided to do this, and frankly, I don't care, because Fruits Basket is amazing, and you can quote me on that. It is a series that I have loved for over a decade now. Ugh. And of all the shows to get the Brotherhood treatment, this was one I was not expecting, but I am so glad it happened. So let's talk about that. This first reaction is brought to you by viewers like you. Thank you. So just in case you're wondering, you've never heard the term before or a similar term, what is the Brotherhood treatment? This is what I and some other people like to call it when an older anime adaptation from the past gets a brand new, more modern adaptation with better animation and usually a narrative that more closely follows the original material. It is named after the anime series Fullmetal Alchemist Brotherhood, which was a readaptation of Fullmetal Alchemist after the first adaptation of the manga in 2003. The Fruits Basket manga was printed between the years of 1998 and 2006, and it was adapted first by Studio Dean way back in 2001. But the manga's original author was not a very big fan of the original anime. Now, I'm not sure as to why. The reasons have probably been stated, but not in an easily translatable form that I have been able to quickly find. If anybody actually knows about the wording or has an interview translated, I would quite like to see that. Pass that along. But what we do know is the mangaka's requirements for this new anime adaptation. One of which is that it would be completely new. New art, new staff, new everything. This didn't translate over to the English dub, thankfully, but we'll get to that in a minute. But this is amazing for existing fans for very obvious reasons. But if you've never dived into Fruba before now, what can you expect? Fruits Basket is about a young girl named Toru who becomes homeless after the death of her mother and decides to shack up in a tent in a nearby forest. And really doesn't like the idea of inconveniencing anyone, so staying with friends or other relatives is out of the question. Turns out the forest that she set up in is owned by the rather large and somewhat powerful Soma family, several members of whom, upon noticing her situation, invite her to stay in the house on their property. Also, her tent gets destroyed in a landslide, so she really didn't have anywhere else to go. It was quite convenient, actually. Oh, and because this can't be a normal series, the Soma family has a curse where if they get embraced by anybody of the opposite gender, they turn into animals of the zodiac. It's kind of a big thing. Now, over the course of the manga and the original series, we got to learn quite a bit about the Soma family, why 3 of its members are somewhat distanced from the main family, how broken these people actually are, and we get to see well, how Toru can help. How can this young high school girl possibly solve the problems of an extremely dysfunctional family? And also, how can she help them re-examine their traditions and their curse? One of the things that I've always really liked about Fruits Basket is how Toru is not really treated like a magical fix for all of the Somas family's problems. She has her own problems as well, so it becomes this interesting symbiotic relationship of helping one another that slowly builds to help fix problems with both of them, and helps kind of fix their souls in a way. There's also a bunch of stuff too, which we haven't seen yet in the new adaptation, which slightly depresses me. You remember this from the original show?
L-O-V-E, we love Yuki! 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 La 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 la.
I sure do. It was the 2000s. Now, as far as like how good this new adaptation is, I can start that off by saying that I may not be the best of judges for that because, well, I never read the manga. But from a production standpoint, the series is stunning. Like, I can show you the difference in the animation between the now 18-year-old show, the old adaptation, and the new one. And that's almost enough because it just looks fantastic, it sounds fantastic, and with luck, the series will far surpass the original narratively as well. This shouldn't be hard, you know, considering that they just need to follow the manga. But, you know, these things can happen. Going back to what I said before, though, while the mangaka asked for everything to be completely new, apparently keeping the old dub cast from Funimation's release of the 2001 series was fair game. It is an odd decision considering that the Japanese got completely recasted, but it is one I am incredibly thankful for. Funimation has historically had an almost 50-50-ish chance of recasting shows that come back around, such as this one, either through sequels, like the Trigun film, where everybody but Vash the Stampede got recasted, or instead things like the Yuki Nagato spin-off of Haruhi, where they recast no one. Everybody got back in their roles for that one, and it was amazing. I love it when they do that. It just keeps this nice continuity with voices, and it's just so great. I love it. So in this case, the majority of voices from the original English dub make their return, with some replacements in instances because, hey, it's been a while. Not everyone is both A, still doing voice acting, and B, even available to come back in the first place. But the main cast pretty much kept all of their voices, and I cannot tell you how nostalgic it was for me to hear these guys back as these characters.
I still have plenty of time before I need to get to class, so I think I'll explore the area a little bit.
That was the moment for me where I really felt like, no, this is Fruits Basket. It is back. And I'm just forever grateful that that situation was able to occur. Because Fruits Basket has a lot of significance for me. It was a series I reviewed in my first ever year of making videos. It was the first anime that I showed to my now fiance to showcase what anime could be. But I always knew that it had problems. Like, the animation was janky, the narrative was flimsy, and it didn't end all that well. If you would even call that an ending. The show did finish off at a narrative stopping point. Sure, but with very little actually resolved, so it was, hey, go read the manga. It was that kind of ending. I never did. Should've, but, you know. So now, with this series so far, even with the meager amount that we have seen at present, it leads me to believe and be extremely hopeful that what is to come is going to be amazing. Now, sure, that could just be the nostalgia talking, and once we start getting into the territory of previously non-adaptated, things that weren't in the previous show, once we get to that, I might start seeing things a little bit differently. But as it stands, this is probably going to be my anime of the season, and I know there is a lot of good out there. I realize this. But Fruits Basket, for me, is something personal enough that I just can't help but praise. Unless everything goes to shit, at which point in time I will reevaluate. Because again, this is only my first reaction to the series. It could potentially turn out quite a bit different from what I'm expecting. So thank you for joining me on this quick discussion. There will be streaming links in the description should you require them for both sub and dub, which of course is my recommendation in this particular case. And let me know down in the comments what else you have been watching this season, and hopefully we'll talk about it in a future video. A big thank you to all of my patrons who make these videos possible. And until next time, watch more anime and stay frosty.